My name is Monica Wilkinson Kelly. I'm the archivist at the Edith B. Ford Memorial Library in Ovid, New York. This interview is being conducted as part of the Cayuga and Seneca Lakes Agriculture and Craft Beverage Memory Project. Today is October 8, 2020. I am interviewing Dave Breeden of Sheldrake Point Winery. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. So my name is indeed Dave Breeden. I am the winemaker here at Sheldrake Point Winery, which is about halfway up the western side of Cayuga Lake.
And can you tell me about your background, where you're from, your education?
Sure. I was born in Michigan, spent my first 15 years there, then high school in California, college in Iowa, college in California, grad school in Illinois, then here. And I have bachelor's degrees in chemistry and philosophy and master's in chemistry and philosophy.
And so prior to moving here, you had no experience in agriculture per se.
I did actually, because both at Davis and at University of California at Davis and at University of Illinois, where I was a grad student, I worked in agricultural areas. My area as a chemist was extraction of interesting chemicals from plant compounds. So I worked in pomology, which is orchard crops at Davis, and then I worked in, I don't actually know what it was, but I worked with corn at University of Illinois. Crop sciences, I guess.
And why did you transition into wine making, winery?
I moved here as the trailing spouse, that's Cornell's term, of somebody who got a job at Cornell. And the plan was for me to finish my PhD, and we would go trailing around the country trying to find a tenure track job for me in philosophy. But it was beautiful here, and I'd never really lived any place beautiful out of all those places I'd lived, and I didn't want to leave here. And it was clear to me I could not be a professor here, so I needed to find something else. And I had a background in plant chemistry and an interest in wine, so winemaking was a logical choice.
Can you describe what makes winemaking unique here? What's very unique about the soil, the microclimate?
I'm not the right guy for soil. We have an outside Dave for that. I'm the inside Dave. But what makes this area special for viticulture and winemaking is the lakes, right? We have the lakes, and the lakes are very, very deep. They absorb heat all summer, re-radiate it all winter. So we're able to grow vinifera grapes, the European style grapes, that we would not otherwise be able to grow because they don't die. The lakes keep us warm enough that the vines are just every year right on the hairy edge of dying, but they don't do it.
And what types of grapes are you growing?
So here at Sheldrake, we have 10 varietals, and if I'm lucky, I can name all 10. For whites, we have Pinot Gris, Riesling, Chardonnay, Muscat, and Gewürztraminer. For reds, we have primarily Cabernet Franc. I mean, most of the acreage is Cabernet Franc. We also have Cabernet Sauvignon, we have Merlot, we have Gamay Noir, and a little teeny bit of Syrah.
And so what is your day like here at the winery?
During harvest or during the rest of the year?
Let's do the 4 seasons.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So harvest is just, it's whatever the grapes demand it be. It's a matter of receiving the grapes and doing to them whatever needs to be done to prepare them for becoming wine. So for whites, that generally just means crushing and destemming and then pressing. So we immediately have white juice. For reds, like we're receiving today, it means crushing and destemming and possibly cold soaking for a while, so keeping them cold, but the juice on the skins. Or if not that, getting them appropriately warm, adding yeast and fermenting the red juice on the skins. So that's harvest. And it sounds easy, but it's a lot of grapes in a short amount of time. Last week was, a 90-hour week, and that's just what harvest is. During the rest of the year, we're working on getting the juice that is now wine or becoming wine and getting it ready to put into bottle and putting it into bottle. So that's, I mean, again, it's a very few sentences, but a whole year's worth of work in those few sentences. And our project is a little more complicated because we're making not just wine for us, but wine for a number of other wineries, some of which don't have wineries at all, want physical production spaces, or some of which do, but don't have the capacity to do everything that they want to do.
Do you sell the grapes to the other wineries as well?
We sell grapes generally just circumstantially, not to the people for whom we are making wine. It just so happens that the grapes that we have extra are not the grapes they want. So yeah, our business is really threefold. We grow grapes, which we use. We grow grapes, which we sell. So about half the grapes we grow, we sell. We make wine for other people from yet other people's grapes. So I think that's the three things we did, if I named them right. Sorry.
So when you're making wine, can you tell me about what the process is, what you're looking for, what the chemical properties are? You have a chemistry background.
I do. What we're looking for is really more a harvesty kind of thing than a rest of the year kind of thing. The most important thing that you do to a wine grape before it becomes wine is pick it at the right time. And that's about how the grape tastes and about the chemistry of the grape, having the right amount of sugar and acid. So that's the most crucial thing, is getting that right. The second most important thing, primarily for whites, is stopping the fermentation at the right time. So having the right amount of alcohol and sugar and acid in the completed product. So that's about being able to taste the fermentations on a daily or more often than daily basis, and stopping the fermentation by chilling right when you think it's at its balance point. I've forgotten what else you asked. Oh, what am I did? Yeah. What else did you ask?
You have 60 acres of vineyards,
Yes,
correct? About.
We do.
What percentage of the grapes are harvested mechanically, and what is the percentage that are hand-picked?
It depends a lot on the year. Generally speaking, we try and machine pick as much as we can. And I would say normally, we've got 60 acres, we maybe get 250 tons of grapes. 200 of them normally will be machine picked. This year, not so much, because everything was ripe early because it was such a hot, dry year. We had to pick things by hand because we wanted to pick them cold, or we wanted to get them cold before they were processed. Once the grapes are picked, there's no way of getting them cold, really. So we had to pick them by hand.
And all of the ice wines have to be picked by hand.
All of the ice wines have to be picked by hand.
Grapes,
that's ice wine grapes have to be picked by hand. That's relatively few tons. I mean, in a really busy year for ice wine, it'll be 6 tons out of 250. So not to speak of.
How many cases do you produce each year?
Yeah, so last year, by way of example, we produced just almost exactly 13,000 cases, 6,500 of which were for us, 6,500 of which were for custom crush clients, the other wineries.
And you don't buy any grapes from anywhere, do you?
Not for our wines, but for our clients' wines, we do, yes.
Okay, so this would be considered an estate winery?
Sheldrake is an estate winery, yeah.
Okay. So the difference being, could you explain that?
Sure.
For people who may not know?
An estate wine is one that has never left the property on which it was produced. So the grapes have to be grown on the property. The grapes have to be processed into juice and further processed into wine and bottled, all on the same piece of ground.
So can you describe the relationship you have with other wineries? Obviously very good if you're growing and producing wines for other.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about the Finger Lakes. And I think this is a very real difference between the Finger Lakes and other wine growing areas in the United States, at least. I can't speak to overseas. We all get along really well here, like exceptionally well. We do our best to be really, really helpful for each other. And we work together on making wines together. There is a group of us or there was up until COVID, there was a group of us that meets twice a month to taste each other's wines, works in progress, blindly, and critique them and make suggestions on how to make them better. And that is so valuable. It's incredibly valuable. And they don't have that in California. There are legal reasons why they don't have it, having to do with proprietary knowledge and people not wanting to share. But here we work really well together. And by way of example, because of the droughty year this year, because it was so hot and dry, there are considerably fewer red grapes than we had anticipated there would be. So I'm going to have like 40 empty barrels. And empty barrels are no fun. They have to be maintained, they have to be stored, they suck up valuable real estate. It's not good. So I am now in the process of seeking out other wineries that need those barrels, and we're going to loan them the barrels. And that's totally not something that would happen elsewhere. Working, I am not. Two of my clients are buying grapes from a grower on Seneca Lake, and he's just been so helpful with letting us come in to sample the grapes so we know when to pick them, about arranging when the picking is going to happen. I mean, we really are amazingly good at working together here.
And so can you tell me about some of the technological advances that you've seen? What has really helped winemaking since you've been in your winemaking career?
I mean, the greatest technological advances, I want to say, speaking out of my hat here, which I'm not wearing, are really the greatest advances in the 20 years I've been in the winemaking industry in New York have been in the vineyard side. There have been just huge strides made in growing high quality, clean grapes and learning how to do just exactly that. It's not easy, it's non-trivial, and there have been huge advances made in how well we do that. And if the grapes are good, my life is easy. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is we really work really hard in the vineyard here so that I don't have to work very hard in the winery. In terms of technological advances in the winery, I mean, all of the stuff that makes my life good and that makes my life easy, none of it is new technology. It's all old, but I have it, which I didn't used to have, and it makes a huge difference that I have it. So we have a cold room in the building across the parking lot. And this year it was crucial for our dry rosé product, which is half of our production. It's our flagship product. We want to cold soak the grapes overnight. Again, hot year. The grapes were never cold. So because I have the cold room, we were able to hand pick them, put them in the cold room, get them cold, and then crush and destem them so that they could cold soak. Similarly, we have a heat exchanger. It's not new technology, but it's new to us. And it means that we can modify the temperature of either fermenting or cold soaking tanks of grapes with relative ease. So, but otherwise, there are technological advances that are more prevalent in bigger winemaking regions. We don't have them here. We're too small a region.
Do you have a lot of drainage tiles?
We have a lot of drainage tile in the vineyard, yeah, and that makes a huge difference. But again, it's not, that's Roman technology, right? It's 3,000-year-old technology, but we're using it.
Can you talk about the unknowns? What do you consider the greatest natural threat to the vineyard in your experience?
I mean, beyond freak weather events that could occur anywhere in any particular year, like one of my growers got whacked by a hailstorm this year, and it took 80% of his crop, just like gone. But that could happen anywhere. And climate change is obviously the thing that worries us most, because the grapes we planted because they were appropriate for this region with this climate. If we have this region with some other climate, they might not be appropriate. And that changing out vines is a non-trivial task. You can't just do that. You're making a 20 or 30-year commitment when you plant a vine. So.
And this is 2020. From what I understand, it's been a very good year. Can you tell me about what the harvest was like?
Yeah, so it's been a spectacular year. Grapes are, this is the line I use when I'm talking to winemakers' dinners or groups of people. Grapes are essentially little teeny paper bags of sugar outside. And if you rain on a little teeny paper bag of sugar, it tends to want to dissolve. So rain is not our friend during crush or during the entire growing season. And this was a very hot, dry year. So the grapes are fully ripe and utterly and wholly without disease. And oftentimes that sort of drought will also produce smaller berries. So you get smaller yields out of the vineyard. By and large, that's not what we've seen this year. Part of the reason we have so much drainage tile here at Sheldrake is that it's a really wet site. We have all the water. So in a year like this, where other people are experiencing losses from lack of water, we're seeing pretty much our normal crop load, but really, really healthy. So it's been great.
You have 60 acres. Do you or somebody else have to go out and inspect those every day or every week for mildew or any of the other diseases?
Vineyard team is out there maintaining them on a daily basis, which is why we have a vineyard team, because growing grapes is a very literally hands-on sort of thing. Most of the operations that need doing have to be done by hand rather than by machine. So they're out there looking at them because they have to be out there. We don't, except during harvest, generally drive around and look for disease. But it's more incidental to the work we're doing anyway.
What do you think has been your greatest success? Can you talk about some of your rewards? I know Sheldrake has done very well in competitions.
Right. The two things we're best known for are our dry rosé of Cabernet Franc, which we've been making since forever. We started making dry rosé the very first year that the winery was open, which was 97, and have been making it ever since. And it was always, the first 10 years I was here, it was 200 cases a year, just like all the time, 200 cases a year, 200 cases a year, 200 cases a year. And then 2013, sales doubled. So we went from 200 to 400. And then we went from 400 to 800, then 800 to 1600. And then in that fifth year, we hit 3,000 cases. So over the course of 5 years, we went from 200 cases a year to 3,000 cases a year. And that was an amazing thing. And it's still hanging out at that level of popularity. Our other thing that wine that we've gotten the most critical acclaim for, I think, is our Riesling ice wine. We've done quite well with that. And I would like to be able to recite for you all the accolades, but frankly, I don't keep them in my head. I mean, there were 95-point scores, there were 99-point scores. The French ambassador bought cases of it.
Wow.
Oh, but the best Riesling in the world. Okay, so there are two international Riesling competitions. One is in Paris and is called Riesling du Monde. The other is in Canberra, Australia, and is called the Canberra International Riesling Competition. And one of our ice wines, the 2014 uninoculated or wild ferment ice wine, we submitted to that, and it got the award for being the best Riesling in the whole world. That year, granted. But it beat 500 other Rieslings. It's always nice to beat a German. It was so the vintage was 2014, so we probably submitted it in 2015.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very amazing. And you were the winemaker for that product.
I was, and the reason it was the best wine in the world is I didn't really have anything to do with it. I mean, or the best Riesling in the world. I mean, that's the thing is, I didn't even add yeast. We crushed the grapes, we left the juice there, it fermented on its own, and at some point I stopped the fermentation. But that was my whole involvement. Really, it's about what we do in the vineyard, not about what we do in the winery.
So you're not very necessarily strict. You like to experiment. How much of it is?
No, I did that by accident. I'm totally strict. I make mistakes, and that was a mistake. A happy mistake, but a mistake.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
Right.
And what would you tell anybody interested in a career in winemaking?
If you're here, the bar has been changed. The bar has been moved up. When I first started in winemaking, I had no winemaking experience and no professional agricultural experience. I had done academic research in agricultural areas, but no actual hands-on agriculture. And I was able to get a job anyway. Now, these days, you wouldn't be able to do that. There are two good academic programs for winemaking in the Finger Lakes, and really and truly, people want to see some amount of academic work before they're willing to hire at this point. Um, Obviously, that's not true for everybody. Neither of the harvest people I'm working with who are not full-time, they work, harvest. It's intern is not the right word because they work for Sheldrake all year long, just not up here. Neither of them has an academic background in winemaking, and I still hired them. But if you were trying to get a job as a winemaker or an assistant winemaker, at this point, you really need to have some sort of academic credential, I think, here.
Is there anything you'd like to add or talk about?
Really, I mean, the thing that makes the Finger Lakes such a great place to make wine, well, two things. One is, the geography of the place, right? The beauty of it, the sloping hills, the lakes, in particular the lakes, which make the viticulture possible at all. But the really the more important thing than that is the community. We get along so well, and it's just it's a joy to be making wine with so many people who care about the same things and are willing to work together to help all of us make the best wine we can make.
Well, that sounds like a good summation. So
Thank you.
with that, I'd like to say thank you, Dave Breeden of Sheldrake Point Winery. Today is October 8, 2020. And
Still.
thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.